Let's get started. Let's get started. Let's get started. What would I like to do?
Get started.
Thank you, Michael. This is DJ Right Click Valentine, bringing you all the latest hits from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000 and beyond. I am your host today for Coaching for Coaches. I myself have been in recovery since December 28th, 1987, working on my 36th year, and also have been with the Connecticut Community for Addiction Recovery for the last 24 years and growing. Yep. I just took somebody that was like, said she was 24 years old and we just hired her. Yes, that happened, hiring people that are younger than I've been working here. That is like, I don't know what to make about all that. We got quite the crew here today. Our host behind the scenes, bringing you all the latest technology and updates, is Mr. Michael Peacemaker Serrano. Come on, Michael, say hello to everybody.
Good morning, everyone. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And if I don't see you later, good night. My name is Michael Serrano, a person in long-term recovery, and I'm just here to have fun. And I'm hoping you guys have fun with us.
Okay, so considering we have so many people, I want you to consider this. So I'm going to kind of do a few things that people who feel more comfortable raising their hand and speaking, like in front of a group, like Khalees, you know how she is. Like a Brian iPhone he is. I don't know what Brian iPhone is, but those kind of people, they like to talk. But if you want to answer the question too, we have a guy, Dominic, on our team that's coined the phrase, feel free to aggressively use the chat. Hey, we have Mr. Ian Knowles here from Rhode Island too. Hello, Ian, how are you? Good to see you.
See you all.
Yep. Look at all these great people here. I am just like, this is so much fun. Michelle, you better not get in an accident. Is that a moving car or are you just going to stay there parked, Michelle? And she's just going to park. All right. So she's out there somewhere. All right. So I would like you to introduce yourself. Just say hi. You might say where you're from. You can do this in the chat, or you can raise your hand. And I want you to describe something you're good at. Tell me something you personally are good at. And I'll start. So my name is Phil Valentine. I told you a little bit about myself, about my recovery. Married, I have 5 children, all out of the house now. Looking to go to the great state of Rhode Island in the near future here. So we'll see what happens there. And I am good at, Michael, I'm not going to say dad jokes because most people really groan at those, right? I'm definitely not good at them. But I would say that I'm good at golf clash. If you do anything, if you do anything for 100 hours, you can say you're probably in the top 5% of all people who do that, right? The top 5%. And when you're talking about billions of people on the planet, I don't know how big a deal top 5% is, but that's finger golf. For those of you who don't know, that's what I'm really like. I can lift my finger off of that. And I got good at that. And if you do something for 10,000 hours, you've achieved mastery. I don't even want to tally how many hours I've been playing that dumb game. So I don't know if I'm close to mastery or not. Doesn't feel like it. So that's how I'm leading into this. And as you know, trust by process that I am going somewhere with this. I know Cindy's even doubting whether I am or not, but she trusts me too, I think. So anybody like to go? Introduce yourself, something you're good at.
I'll go.
Thanks, Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy Shaw. I am also a parent of 5 children. I am in recovery. I'm the chief recovery officer up at the lighthouse or down at the lighthouse in New Canaan, Connecticut. And I am an orchid whisperer. I grow
Wow.
orchids. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you can whisper to orchids. I just want to know if they talk back to you.
They do.
Yeah, I knew I liked you for a reason. You are just as weird as I am, so that's pretty cool.
And I talk to them. Everyone gives me their orchids, that are dying, and I bring them back. That's what I do.
Khalees, how are you today?
I am well enough. I should
Yes.
say. My name is Khalees, and I had 2 actually, just because I was thinking today. One, I'm really good at creativity and like trying new things and just exploring art, different stuff, whatever that may be. But I also think I'm really good at making connections, because I messaged Michael today because somebody messaged me like on Instagram looking for support. And then they're in Hartford, Connecticut. So I've been contacted Michael, like, how can we give them some support? And I just think that making connections, I'm really just good at making connections that then later help me support other people.
Thank you. I switched my screen, so I lost my train. Willem.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Will. I'm a person in recovery. As you can tell by my accent, I'm not from America. So I'm from Gloucester in the UK. I was invited here by Khalees and Nifa. It's really nice to be here and see you all. I like to think I'm good at motivating and encouraging people. I almost see that as like sort of God's will for me and my responsibility in life to, be nice and be the positive influence. So I'm going to say that is my thing that I'm good at.
Thanks, Will. Chris.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris McGinnis. I'm in Maryland, and I work for Dolan Research International. And my thing that I'm really good at is kind of silly, but I'm really on point with memes and send them out to all my friends all the time. But yeah, that's I think a little skill that I have.
Thank you. Nate Rush, the infamous Nate Rush.
Hey, Phil, good morning. Michael,
Good morning.
and everybody else. Some people say that I'm pretty good at inspiration. I inspire people who had none. So inspiring hope. Some people say I'm pretty good at that.
Some people say that about you, Nate, but what do you say?
Well, the evidence say I am. So I guess I'll own it.
Thank you, Nate. I appreciate that. Helu, good to see you, my friend.
Well, my name is Helu Vienna. I am in the DMV, Maryland, Baltimore area, and I'm a father of 4. My youngest one being 8, the one right after that being 26. So there's a gap, and with the gift of a do-over with my youngest one, I am pleased with that. And my son just finished Navy boot camp, so I'm excited about that. I would say I am good at making connections and expressing empathy, building on that to support.
Thanks, Helu. Hello, Ian.
Morning, y'all. I am a program director at RICARES, which is the state's addiction recovery community organization. And if Phil's defining being good at as spending a lot of time doing, I'm good at walking dogs and dog care, because that's a consistent every
Nice.
day.
I love that. Thank you. Kelly, how are you?
Hi, Phil. I'm good. Very good. My name is Kelly Strada. I'm the senior peer for the Department of Psychiatry at Strong Hospital up here in Rochester, New York. And I'm currently working in a med psych unit for people with substance use disorder, obtained gross infections and stuff like that. Luckily, I'm not squeamish. I would say that I am very good at disarming people. I'm very good at kind of like shifting the entire conversation, usually with humor. I think I'm hilarious, so I like to think that I do it with humor. I don't know if everyone would agree, but this is about me. So
I agree. Vale, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Good morning, everyone. I am Vale Leonard. I live in Baltimore, Maryland. I am the founder and CEO of the Light of Truth Center, behavioral health system of care for women recovering from drugs and alcohol. I'm in long-term recovery, and I think I am exceptional at supporting the overall recovery community.
Thank you, Vale. Ed, good to see you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ed Havlovic. I am a clerk here in New Jersey. And what I believe is I am good at helping to lift people up and making adjustments to people that I meet. I am the second youngest of 15 siblings. So I've learned to kind of react and learn how to read people. And to this day, I still find that I am able to lift people's spirits when I am called upon.
Thank you,
Looking forward
Ed.
to today. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Neetha, how are you?
Hey, Phil, I am amazing. Thank you. So what am I good at? I am good at managing a multi-generational household, which means I can multitask and I can always hang on to some hope because it is controlled chaos.
Well, can you truly multitask, or is that a misnomer?
I think it's about being able to pick. When we talk about like juggling plates,
Yes.
I think it's about knowing which ones are plastic and knowing which ones are glass. And it just, at least I can hang on to the glass ones and let the plastic ones drop.
Gotcha. That's a cool analogy. Thank you. Anybody else like to raise their hand and say hi to the group? Going once. Did everybody aggressively use the chat that didn't say hi? Hey, Bunny, you got a whole crew back there, dude.
Yeah, man. Good morning. Everybody had taken my answer all the way up to the last one, so which I was going to say, multitasking, but now I don't know. Is it a misnomer? I don't know. I was thinking it was, I was good at that because I played basketball and I was a point guard, so that to me is multitasking. But I don't, maybe that's a misnomer. I don't know. But I am co-founder, co-executive director, program manager. I'm a certified peer recovery specialist here in Maryland, and I'm a peer supervisor. And I'm also now a very new RCP since last week. So I think of multitasking. I don't know, but it could be a misnomer, though. I don't know.
I say misnomer because I've come to the conclusion, well, somebody brought it up in a training once, that you can only do one thing at a time in the present. There's only one thing as far as tasks go. So I just threw that out there. Christine, how are you?
Unmuting would help.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine. Hi, Ed. I'm a recovery coach, SERPA. I'm not actively working, or I should say getting paid as a recovery coach right now. But I feel like I just live as a recovery coach always. And CCAR Recovery Coach Academy has given me that. And I'm excited to meet everybody and get involved again and refresh all my recovery coaching skills, and just having a community of support like this means the world to me. And I kind of stepped back for the last year, taking care of my mom. So I'm here and I'm excited. And I'm grateful for all of you to be here.
I'm glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Mike Lloyd.
Hey, Phil, good to see you.
Likewise.
I was just multitasking and I was holding my laptop while grilling chicken sausages
Well, yeah, there you go.
because I am starving. So I work for a company called Sober Escorts down in Ocala, Florida. I do primarily interventions, but we train recovery coaching down here, companions and case management and all that stuff. And Jamie also says hi.
Hi, Jamie. So you said what you were good at in the chat, so thank you for that. Yeah. And
Yeah,
good.
primarily making my 3-year-old daughter smile. That's what I'm best at. Everything else is up for other people to grade.
That's an excellent talent. Anybody else? Michelle, you're out of the car and into the light.
I'm out of the car and into my kitchen, actually. Good morning, everybody. My name is Michelle Harder, and I am the founder and CEO of Harder Recovery Consulting, which is a supervision and training organization. And what do I think I'm good at? Oh boy, I never thought I was good at anything during my addiction, but I found that in my older age that I'm really good at offering empathy to people. I have really big shoulders, and I have a way of connecting with people on a level that makes them happy. So if that's my legacy in life, I'm pretty happy with that.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. Appreciate that.
Good morning, everybody.
Anybody else? Okay. So I asked you something you're good at, and just assess to yourself whether that was an easy exercise for you or you struggled a little bit with it about trying to find something that you were good at. And I've run this particular module 5 times now in all the centers, so I have a lot of feedback because we always teach best what we most need to learn. Why I asked you about this is I want to explore the concept of ego. E-G-O. So let me do this. Let me just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I'm going to list like 5 or 6 terms, okay? And I want you to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. First one is asparagus. Thumbs up or thumbs down? All right. Here comes an Khalees is like, what are you talking about? The second word would be snow. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Brian is like a big thumbs down for that. A few thumbs up, a few thumbs down. Okay, I trust you guys for this next one. Thumbs up or thumbs down for the word Republican? Some people are not even going to like play this game.
I don't even know what that is.
Well, but then what if you think it's, you could say whatever it is. I just said that it has a lot of connotation for a lot of people. Thumbs up or thumbs down.
You do thumbs down on this on the reactions.
Yeah, well, you could do
Well,
that
I'm
too.
thumbs down. I'm thumbs down. Okay. Now we know.
It
Now we
does.
know. I'm thumbs down. I'm
Gotcha.
sorry.
Thumbs up or thumbs down for the word Republican. The next one is thumbs up or thumbs down for storm. Thumbs up or thumbs down for the word I introduced initially, ego.
Down.
Everybody's all over the place. Got you with that. So that's good. How would somebody give me, help me out? How would you define ego? I need other people to jump in and talk because we got like 37, 40 people. How do you define ego? Khalees.
So you asked the question, you said just a minute ago, like, was it easy for us to come up with something we were good at, or did we find difficulty in that? And I always find difficulty in things like that. And I really have to push myself to say something because I often don't see the assets in myself.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had many conversations around that. Ego is when people are overconfident. The ones who have humility and empathy are normally scared to death, in my opinion. I'm scared to make the wrong decision. Or might have fear around that, or just nervous because I care so much, or I want to do things the right way, whatever that may be, where ego is just, it kind of feels unteachable. They already, can't, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So ego for you is a negative concept.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you. Helu.
Yes, for me, ego, I define it as an override. It overrides everything that expresses empathy, or it overrides. I'm right all the time. It overrides everything that you
override.
Yeah, it overrides every thought that could possibly do something else because I'm in the right place. And early on, I identify with that specifically because I lived on my ego. And then in my sponsor, the very first thing he told me, stop this because your ego is not your amigo. And in that process, he was telling me the fact that, I can't even begin to express empathy or experience empathy and humility to get strength as long as ego's in the way.
Thank you, Helu. So that was, okay, gotcha. Robin.
Good morning.
Are we going to be able to see you today?
I'm not looking my best, but I'll show you. I'll show you a second. I'm just looking my best.
Be beautiful as always, Robin.
That's why I love you, Phil.
Yeah.
I see, I learned that ego is easing God out. In my recovery journey, it's like when I'm easing God out, that's taking a good orderly direction away from those who are able to give me something because I'm so closed-minded to what I could receive because I got all the answers. I'm just the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's no room for that good orderly direction to be received by me. So
thank you. Appreciate that. Mike, how are you?
Hey, for me, ego is just a red flag or information that my humility or one of my people's humility is gradually fading away. It's kind of a neutral word. It's just information.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Nate. Nate, you're on mute, and I can't really tell if you're talking, so I can't hear you.
For me, it was part of what Robin said about easing God out. And then the other part is it's all about me, all about my selfish, self-want, self-need. So it's I can't help anybody. It's just all about me. And so
gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bunny.
Yes, people hit around it a little bit. All of that I can agree with, but I look at it as a kind of a fictitious or self-created facade or persona, if you will, and many times it's like a representative. And so sometimes, a lot of times, it's like I'm trying to portray to you who I think I am.
Got you. Thank you, Mike.
So all the definitions I've heard so far, I think are like inflated ego definitions when our ego takes over. And what I've learned in recovery for me is that, balance and moderation is key. We do need a a sense of self-importance and self-worth and self-esteem. It's when that becomes excessive that it becomes an issue. I've always said character defects are character traits that have been taken to the extreme. You know, if we got love, it's important, but if we take it to extreme, we've got lust, which is not that important, right? So confidence, I think ego comes from confidence, and inflated ego becomes an issue when we start forgetting about others.
Thank you. Love that. Michelle.
So I think it's really a sense of your own self-importance, your own self-esteem. And I think, you know, what Mike said, it can be inflated and be a detrimental aspect of your personality, or you can be, you know, on a nice level ground and, you know, just kind of be who you are without being imposing. You know?
Thank you. Ed.
I am on board with what Michael was saying. I think our egos are part of us, and how we use and how we rely on our ego is important. And as Mike said, how could we do what we do if we didn't have a sense of self-esteem, self-importance, how self-respect for ourselves, etc. I guess the best correlation I would have is a knife a good thing or a bad thing? A knife can be a terrible weapon. It can hurt us. It can hurt others if not used properly. And I think to use, again, I'm sorry, Mike, but stealing all your words, to use that sense of balance, a knife can be probably one of the best things for us. And how could we eat without a decent knife?
Gotcha. Thank you. Will?
I love conversations like this. And I'm kind of agreeing with everyone at both ends of the spectrum. So, you know, I think I've certainly been sort of taught in recovery that ego is a really bad thing. You know, you shouldn't have it, you know, edging God out and all that. And I do agree, you know, that inflated self's a negative thing to have. And, you know, it's kind of like the opposite of ego is the opposite of, you know, low self-esteem, and we aim for humility in the middle somewhere. But there's been points in my recovery and in my life where my ego has been really helpful. You know, when people really doubt on you and you really lack confidence, my ego can kick in and give me the drive I need to sort of push forward. You know, when people laughed at me when I got into recovery and when I said I was going to become a recovery worker, my ego kind of took over and gave me the sort of courage, even if it is a little bit fake, to push through. So I don't think ego is as bad as the press it gets. However, an inflated ego, like someone was just saying, can be really damaging to yourself and to others.
Thank you, Will. Who's up next? I lost them. Kelly.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I read a lot of Carl Jung and a lot of Eckhart Tolle. And Tolle talks about how ego is like the wildest dream of the unhealed inner child. And I really dig on that concept. I really like the idea that it sort of springs from maybe all of these things that we felt we were stripped of, or that we weren't good enough to have, or, you know, like all of the traumas from the childhood that brings us to the adulthood. Ego is kind of just like this big manifestation of that. And I also kind of like, to what Willem was saying, ego has helped me accomplish a lot just out of pure spite. Like I got my first 2 years off spite and ego, basically. You know, it wasn't that I wasn't actively doing work to redeem myself and redeem my life. It wasn't that I wasn't actually investing in my own personal betterment. I was also spiteful because I had a lot of people rolling their eyes, and, you know, that the same thing happened when I got into the field. I said, I'm going to get a job at the most prestigious agency in my area and I'm going to kill it. And people were like, okay. And here I am because I'm spiteful. But I think that, you know, a lot of these words, the rooms sometimes teach us that there is only a singular definition of some of these words, like ego and humility and work and serenity. You know, sometimes we have to kind of expand out of what the literature tells us. I know that I have. And it was a really difficult reconciling. I felt like I was breaking the law, which is nothing new for me, but at least in recovery, that wasn't something that I did. So it's a very kind of strange, yucky sometimes process to deprogram from that kind of 12-step mindset.
Got you. Thank you. Shasta, how are you?
Good morning. I am well. How are you?
Well enough.
Well enough. I think it's one of those both ands, like a lot of people were saying. I think that as human beings, we need ego to survive. If we're not concerned about ourselves in the smallest capacity, we're not going to make it as an individual or as a species. So I think that it was created in us with a purpose. The problem is, we are also dirty human beings that will take anything and take it to the max, and it can definitely turn into a negative word. I think off the cuff, when you say ego, it does have that negative connotation with it, probably just because we use it in that capacity to mean it's a negative word, but I don't think that it necessarily is a bad word. If it wasn't for ego or any sense of myself or my self-worth or being, I wouldn't be here today. And that's where I draw boundaries from, and all of the other things is the ego and the protecting of me, as to how I continue to survive every day.
Yeah, I'm in the camp, and why I wanted to talk about this, and I have a few more questions for everyone to answer, was in my early recovery in 12-step orientation, I was indoctrinated and fully believed that ego was edging God out, right? And what I've come to believe over the years is more of the Freudian concepts of id, ego, superego, is that ego is really just a sense of self, right? And you guys talked about that. How do you think about yourself, your self-worth, your self-esteem, your self-value? And a young lady that visited from England a few weeks ago, that shall remain nameless, Khalees, was that we talked a lot about self-worth, right? So this is where that topic kind of came along. And that has to do with ego, right? So let me ask you a question and relate your own stories or your own experience in the field or whatever. How does ego play into active addiction and or recovery? And the floor is yours. Talk about a simple little question, right? Mike.
Well, and I think we go both extremes again, right? In my active addiction, ego, everything was self-important, self-serving. It was all about me. And even when I was trying to get into treatment, right? The old joke, that I was living in the back of my truck for 3 years and damn near dying. And second week into treatment, I'd turn around when they served breakfast and told them that I couldn't drink skim milk. I needed like whole milk, and well, to get over that and just say, hey, I'm not that important. In recovery, I think ego is important for me because, like we were saying earlier,
You mean once?
because it does give me that sense of confidence that I've got something to share, that I've been through it. I try to keep that in check because I still realize, it's how do I share my confidence without becoming too self-important, right?
Yeah, that's the balance. Thank you. Kelly.
I love the acknowledgement of how, like, the second we walk into detox, suddenly I have all these standards. It's like Monday, I'm literally eating out of the garbage. Tuesday, I'm like, is this gluten-free? Like, please, what? But I'm going to stick more to like my more recent relevant stuff. I know for me, ego, since I started working for the University of Rochester, it is a very, very prestigious, well-known thing in this area, all throughout upstate and Western New York. And it's a very academia thing, matriculating and degrees and all of these things are like that alphabet soup that comes after people's names is a very important thing up here. And I don't have that. Like, your girl dropped out of community college. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I know for me, part of ego has helped me sustain the kind of side eye that I get as a non-degreed person doing such important work with I have such a visible presence here. And more and more, the more that I've just pushed through and believed that like I am everything that I need to be for this job. And I don't care what your degree told you, the streets told me something else, and I'm going to stand on that. And it's really helped me kind of thrive in this environment that just wants to either break me down and push me out or shove me into a master's program. So that is kind of what has happened in the 2 years that I've been here, is that I've been able to sort of like, I like to think that I'm opening minds, that I can keep up conversation with MDs and DOs and, you know, cardiologists and clinicians without a degree, simply because A, I'm really good at lying, and B, I'm able to kind of sponge, and I'm very receptive to things, and I read people very well. And I guess it kind of goes back to that spiteful thing, but lately in my work, my ego has told me that I'm good enough to be in the same room as some of these, you know, super decorated, super educated, super degreed people. And I fought for this spot, and I damn well deserve it.
Kelly, I've missed you. Oh my gosh. You know, it's been a while. It's been too long, but holy cow. Yeah.
I know. I just want to tell you that I have a huge rock that says I am both precious and insignificant in the wellness garden that I made for our unit outside. It's like dinner plate size. And so I walk by it every morning on my way into work, and I'm just like, I wonder how Phil's doing and if he's still as weird as I remember.
Oh, definitely. I've gotten weirder. It happens when you get age. Shasta.
Yeah, I think for me, the way that works with my active addiction, like my ego was very primal. You know, it was just about, my conscience was very, very small. And if things managed to cross over that conscience level, that's where I started to feel shame. And then you start the self-talk of, I'm just a piece of crap, I'm a horrible person, look at what I'm capable of doing. And that just exacerbates the cycle, right? And I think that you can change your ego. I think that it evolves once you're able to get out of that primal state of just needing to survive, which is what ego's there for. You can kind of learn how to balance that out in the recovery. And that's where I am now. I am still important, but the need for the drug or the alcohol is not as important. The other things are important to me.
Yeah, dang, Shasta. Now you're gonna have me like going off on this tangent about what is a primal ego. I have no idea. I was like, crack me up, got me thinking about it. Ms. Khalees, you're rubbing your head already, so good. I'm glad you're thinking.
You know me, I'm rattling.
Yeah.
I was trying to think about like a real experience. And I remember like 2 years into my recovery, I got asked to speak at the House of the Parliament here in the UK. And I was a lot of ego was there, you know, like, oh, look at me. And I kind of think whenever I'm seeking validation in what I'm doing is based on the perception of others. And let me prove that I'm good enough. And that was kind of like, just not really caring about, like, I wasn't really worried about other people's, but I was seeking validation. And so it was like balancing all of that. And I also didn't think about the implications on other people, because some people some people were like hurt, like, well, you're bragging about this and you're not considering like, I'm going through this right now, you know? And I was like, oh, I didn't think about them. I'm thinking about me. It was all about me. When now I think today, and, you know, whenever I think about recovery, I don't know, I get humility keeps coming up to me. And I think what it is I can share my truth. You know, we say people don't know what they don't know unless they know it. So I struggle to put my successes out there, but how will people know that I've achieved these things unless I put that out there, unless I talk about my successes? But I can do that with humility and compassion. And I also think whenever I don't have to brag, because my actions and the way I walk and the way I talk should show that I am enough, or whatever that is. I don't want to use the word ego. I don't want to say I'm ego. I don't know. Like, I'm just not ready to.
Right. There's a difference. Like, I think Mike was talking about it. The word ego and being egotistical or being an egomaniac, you know, there's just a difference in that. So we've associated ego with being egotistical.
I'm just going to say confident. I can be confident in who I
Right.
am and the things I've accomplished, and I can have humility for others.
So I have a question for you.
Oh, shit. Let's go, Phil.
Why do you need people to know about your successes? And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Well, let's put a pin in it.
Okay, we'll put a pin in it. Put it in the parking lot. No. And Nate, what's up?
So in active addiction, I had no conscious. So when I wasn't even aware of ego, because I was doing what I needed to do to get one more. You know, my whole thing was, can I get one? Can you help me get to what I needed? And so really, I really didn't care, wasn't thinking about who I hurt or any of that other stuff that wasn't relevant. And so now in recovery, doing what I've been doing over the last 31 years, you know, I have a sense of consciousness, and I like what you said about egotistical versus ego. Yeah, ego has a place in my self-worth. I don't like self-esteem either, but my self-worth, you know, how I matter, and help others know that they matter. So ego works for me in that way. For me in my life today, it means a whole lot different. Egotistical is, I don't want that being part of my story, but having an ego to help people understand that they matter as well. So that's kind of how I got it broke down.
Cool, thank you. Will.
This is all right, all this, isn't it, having these conversations? So like, I mean, yeah, for me, I could, I don't know, when when I was using, I could be there, scrabbling around to get a tenner together, out pinching out the shops, but then I'd sit there and I'd judge the man in the corner who's begging for a couple of quid, so I wasn't as bad as them, or all that kind of stuff, the denial or whatever you want to call it. But that was kind of my ego in active addiction. And I want to give an example, which I think is a little bit funny, but it was definitely ego. So I was working at a local drug and alcohol service, and there was a really high doctor there who didn't rate what we were doing, basically. So we were doing like a peer-led psychosocial model, coaching type model thing, and she kept giving us a really hard time. And I turned around and said, listen, I spent just as much time and money as you have researching addiction. And and she wasn't very happy with that comment. And then this bit I shouldn't have said. And then I turned around and said, look, love, you're the biggest drug dealer in the county. She's signing off methadone scripts and all this, that, and not saying methadone hasn't got a place. I'm not saying that. But that was my ego at play. But in that scenario, it kind of got me heard in the same way, if that makes any sense. So
it does. Yeah, well said. Thank you. Keithy.
Hey, hello.
Hello.
Really great conversation. Active addiction, ego just was like the blindfold that was like not letting me really acknowledge where I was headed, and didn't let me know I was going straight for that wall. I had it all mapped out. You couldn't tell me, looked a mess, acted a mess, but you couldn't tell me that. In duality, in recovery, I've learned a great sense of self. The veil's been removed, and I look at it now, and when I have these conversations, I listen, and it all makes sense. The ego plays a big part. And there's a lot of duality to that. The gentleman mentioned you need a knife. It's about how you use it. And today I got a lot of confidence. I'm doing some great things. And for me, it's how I want to be remembered.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Natha.
Oh, I don't know if I had ego in my addiction. I think I was more a rapid downfall that was survival, shame, guilt, remorse, and just a lot of sadness. And it doesn't feel like there was much ego in there at all. And I think I mean, Kelly said what I was thinking. It was that stage of recovery about being insignificant and precious.
Mhm.
And precious doesn't necessarily mean egotistical. It just means of value. And today I believe I have value. And I think in the space I'm at in the UK, that is something sometimes my husband thinks I'm crazy. I sit at the computer and go blinders on, blinders on, blinders on physically with my hands to the side of my head, because like yesterday, I was in a meeting and I just literally got told, who were you to even be here and do this and say this? Where is the peer reviews, the evidence, all of that? And I was just like, I have just as much right. And if you were open-minded to innovation, change, and new things, then you would see my value. And I think.
Did you say that?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I put it in the chat with my email address. You know? But and then I just had to walk away, and I walked away and I felt so sad. And I just was like, I just have to tell myself every day, stay strong. And Khalees and I often say that we are standing on the shoulders of giants, even if nobody sees them. And I have to be okay that nobody sees them. I have to be confident and present enough that that's okay. But I struggle with ego. I struggle with that word. I struggle with a lot of people try to, in the clinical world around me, just devalue what I do and who we are on a daily basis. So it is a constant battle to be strong, but not become egotistical.
Well,
So-
when people devalue another person, that's their ego out of control. That is self-will run riot, as they would say in the rooms of AA, right?
Yeah.
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 Mike.
Yeah, I agree with what Nathan just said and with a lot of what's been said. And that struggle is real. There's days I can feel like I'm worthless, and then days I have to keep my ego in check. But I go back to, I learned early in recovery that it's not so much important what happens to me, but how I respond to what happens to me. And ego is like a thermostat. If the thermostat is below 68 or 20 centigrade, I'm not going to scream and rip it off the wall. I'm going to turn it up. So for me, ego is that thermostat on where my ego or what others is.
So that's fascinating. And over the course of listening to many people talk about ego and the role in their addiction and their recovery, I just loosely break them into two categories. The one where the ego is like telling us that everything is okay, we're superhuman, we look like shit, but we think we're all that, we got everything together, but it's all falling apart. And there's the others like Natha described, where our ego, I believe it's our sense of self, plummets the other way. We tell ourselves we are worthless, we deserve to die, nobody cares, nobody loves me, I'm going to the garden and eat a worm, all that kind of stuff. But those are both situations where the ego has run riot. It's out of control, right? And so when we get into recovery, things change. Anybody want to talk to me or us a little bit about how their perception of self, their ego changed once they got into recovery? Michelle.
Oh boy, I can talk about that all day long. There's my ego.
Good.
Right. In just simply, I think like a lot of people, my ego, I was it. I was the end all, the be all. I was it. That was it. I learned that through, the way that my family treated me. I was a privileged young white woman, and I had the little white patent leather shoes and the Easter bonnet and the white gloves, and that's how I grew up, in imperfection. And so, when you're always told that you're perfect, you tend to believe those messages, as a child. Well, boom, get into my addiction and, talk about self-will run riot. Like, oh my God, I had a lot of amends to make when I got into recovery, a lot of amends to make. And, you know, I've been around a few of these, you know, this year, and it was a long process to determine what the difference was between my self-importance and everybody else, right? It's not just about finding that place of humility or being humble. For me anyways, it was a whole process of reflection, of real deep spiritual work that didn't happen till my 20th year in sobriety. You know, it was something that I thought, hey, listen, you know what? I need to move forward because I still see pings of that little perfect girl with the white ankle socks and the white patent leathers, right? I'm not that person. Thank friggin' God. Thank God, you know? Is my ego out of control sometimes? Yes. Yep, it is. Difference is I can look at it, I can decipher it, I can feel it, I can apply some spiritual principles to it, and I can move forward and leave it behind. I don't beat myself up over it anymore. No more.
Great. Thanks, Michelle.
Yep.
Cindy? You got to unmute yourself. We got there you go.
There we go. Hey, so I mean, what everyone is saying really does resonate with me. For me, and I'm sort of like a broken record with this, but the right sizing, if you call it ego, sense of self, you know, a lot of my addiction was driven by wanting to be accepted as someone other than me, right? Because I couldn't be with me. And what has been just life-changing for me is the work of self-compassion and just being able to be gentler with myself, speak to myself like I would speak to a friend even, you know, or someone I care about, and include myself in the circle of kindness. And I think that is, that's been just life-changing, profoundly life-changing for me. And that is the biggest part of my practice today. And what I share with people is, you know, how can we take care of ourselves in that way? So that for me was just, you know, amazing.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. Hi, Dennis. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, everybody. Much like has already been said, when I first came into recovery, I felt pretty worthless, unworthy, all of the words that go along with that. And this process of coming to have a little bit of self-worth or feel worthy, feel good enough is really kind of new to me. The fact that there is such thing as a healthy ego, that maybe I am good enough to be worthy of being loved and appreciated, and to do that for myself. This is all stuff that's been learned by other people modeling it for me and showing it to me when I couldn't show it for myself. So it's really been, I guess, for a 12-step kind of thing, a spiritual awakening of huge proportions to understand that I'm okay. And, very grateful for everything. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you, Dennis. Mike?
Hey, thanks, Phil. So a lot of what I heard when I came in, and someone told me this when I was early on, they said that, you know, addicts and alcoholics are the only people that can look down on people from the gutter. And I was just like, that makes sense. And, you know, from the time I was in rehab, you know, we're talking 12 years ago, I was still the guy walking everybody around the building, talking to them about their problems. I was trying to counsel people, you know, 8 years before I was actually certified to do so. My ego told me that I could do that stuff, even though I had literally nothing. Right. So to an extent, you know, it can be positive and negative, right? I think I think there is a big difference between being aware of what your ego is and being egotistical. I can be really confident and very nice at the same time. I don't know that I can be egotistical and that nice at the same time. I'm not sure. But I will tell you, the difference was I was walking with a purpose after a set amount of time in sobriety. And before then, everything was just based on what other people thought of me. My entire life was that way, and I kind of realized, 9 years into sobriety, I was sitting in a meeting and we were going around doing affirmations. And it was the first time I had ever said that I deserve the life I have today. And I couldn't say that for 9 years. It took me to say that. And I really think that's when the confidence part really boosted up. So the confidence part, and I do a lot of my coaching on this with, the difference with confidence and ego, and the fact that when I'm confident, it really doesn't matter what other people think. The perceptions don't carry as much weight, so there are times where, I'll sit here and I'm constantly gauging myself, right? Because, how is this affecting me? Oh, well, I just achieved something here. Should I celebrate it or just, it's a constant battle, right? But I have learned, that, people that come from different backgrounds, like we have come from, seeing the things that we have seen, we should take pride in celebrating accomplishments that we have. And I think there's a big difference. So thanks Phil.
Mike. Ed.
Hi. Oh man, this is a great discussion. Yeah, personally, I don't believe I would be here today if it was not for my ego. And so many times, and again, personally for me, I learn about myself through my ego. And when I'm looking at ego, I'm looking at self-esteem, my self-importance, my self-worth, my self-respect. When I was out in long-term use, I shot all of that to hell. It was gone. And I emphasize all of those parts of that ego, all of the negatives. But I'm learning for myself that there is the healthy ego and the unhealthy ego. And once I came into recovery and did the work, I was able to then focus on the healthy aspects of my ego. But here's the interesting thing for me. I learn about my ego because I look within myself through reflection, self-reflection, and all of that. But here's the thing that I find amazing also, is that if I'm in a meeting or in a recovery situation, you tell me and you show me my ego. Because for me, my ego is not only my own thinking and my understanding of myself, but I reveal ego through my actions and through my words. And my sponsor would be the first to smack me down when he says you're revealing your ego in a negative way. So you guys are making me think of some things that I haven't thought about in a long time. So thank you to everyone.
Thanks. We'll take a couple more and then we'll get you to the next question. So Robin, you're up. You there, Miss Robin? Because you're muted. I can't hear
I
you.
am here. I am here.
Okay.
I thank everybody for sharing that. When I was thinking about ego and I shared that, when I came into recovery, it was about easing God out, and that was for sure. Um, I was taught, and I'm a firm believer, I see it. We can only bring into our recovery journey what we brought from the streets until we learn something different. And so, I had to have ego and ease God out to do the things that I did, to sell dope, to do whatever else it took for me to sustain that that lifestyle. And that took a lot of ego. And it wasn't something that I just came to do. It took time to build up that ego, to self, that sense of false self pride that kept me doing what I needed to do. And like the gentleman before me, like had I not had that, I don't think I'd be here today. So coming into recovery and being in the service mode and learning how to become selfless, it's still a matter of time and a process. I'm still learning not to be so super selfish and self-centered. Now,
Gotcha.
I have really um, changed over the years, and for the good, thank God.
Hmm. Hmm.
However, that ego and pride and stuff will still flare up. But what I'm in touch with is that when I see it coming, I can see it coming faster than I could before because I didn't know it was an issue.
Hmm.
And now I'm learning that, oh, maybe you might want to tone that down. Maybe, it's still a part of me. The thing too, and I think someone mentioned, it's still an authentic part of me that also helps me on this side in my recovery. Just like a young lady said, I thought that I didn't come from a family that told me I wasn't nothing. I came from a family that always told me I was. I just felt less than. And
Hmm.
so when I started achieving and becoming successful in recovery, that arrogance rose its head again. You know what I mean? Because it's always a part of me. It's just like it's always a part of me. I just gotta know when to horn it in or when it's manifesting itself to not be good, to easing God out
Hmm.
instead of it being something that of self confidence, self worth. This is a good thing, Robin. You did succeed doing this. You did succeed doing that, and those are great things, and that's nothing to be ashamed about, and it should be celebrated and rewarded and accepted by
Hmm.
me, whether others do it or not. But if I don't accept these accomplishments and accolades and things first, how am I going to expect you or those I'm helping to accept it
Yeah.
and believe that it's achievable? So that's the transformation. And I said, I believe the transformation process continuously happens because you know what we say in recovery, everything is subject to revision.
Hmm.
And in my journey, it's been revisioned and revisited and
Of
a
course.
million times over. So it wasn't like it's not to me a one-time fix or one-time thing. It is
Correct.
really a moving process.
Thank, thank you, Robin. We'll move Ian, and then we'll go to the next question. How are you, Ian?
Hey, this is great. So during my addiction career, it was really important for me that people think that was smart and knowledgeable. So I remember always pretending to know what people were talking about, no matter how much I didn't know it. And as you can imagine, that resulted in a lot of embarrassing situations for me. And in recovery, I learned the importance of humility and as a counter to my ego. And the dynamic is always playing off and out, and I'm feeling it today, where every time Phil asks a question, I want to shoot my hand out up so you can all hear how smart I am and what great insights I have. And but I'm consciously working humility and telling myself to shut up and listen. And damn it, everything that I've thought of, one of you has said, and not only that, have you said everything that I thought of, but you've given it better insights and perspectives than I've had. So regarding ego, for me, humility works.
Thank you, Ian. There's lots of ways to think about ego, and how you construct it in your own mind is up to you, of course. I like the idea of inflation and deflation, like an inflated ego. So I almost have like a basketball or a tire that, like, when I'm in balance, my tire's at 35 PSI, 35 pounds per square inch. But sometimes my ego gets up into the 40, 50, 60 range, or then it deflates. So how do I keep the right air pressure in my ego? What's the right pressure for me too? So I've really started to think about it that way. It is Ian posted like that idea when we were actively running that I heard in the rooms of 12 step, an egomaniac with an inferiority complex, right? And I think the egomaniac deflates a little bit to a level of humility and confidence. And it's the other side too, is that the inferiority complex inflates to a higher level where you can become humble and confident too. So my question is, we talked for an hour about ego. What's it got to do with recovery coaching? Kelly.
So throughout my process as a professional and throughout the trainings that I facilitated and just working around other people who are in like the substance use disorder support field, clinicians, case acts, etc. You see a lot of people come to this work to be a savior. And I know I certainly had to be very disciplined and diligent with myself. When I first dipped my toe into the world of recovery supports and services, and I forgot the question.
What does ego have to do with recovery coaching?
That's it.
Yeah.
I knew I was going somewhere with it. I was like, okay, here we go. So I think what happens is that sometimes, especially those of us who come to this work as recovering people with all of the highs and lows that come with active addiction, and we want to save our friends. We want to be the support that we needed at the time. And sometimes that will veer into that like overinflated ego where like I am their last hope. And I know if I'm ever in a place where I'm placing my need for success above giving the recovery the driver's seat, I fucked all the way up. And I have to like, there have certainly been times where I've had to remove myself from someone's care because either I did have an established relationship with them prior, or there's just something about some people, you just want to take them home. And it's like that tugging behind your belly button towards them. And it's just like this primal instinct to help and save. And when I feel that, it's my responsibility as a person with the appropriate training that I've had and with the insight that I've been given to remove myself. Ego will have me continue providing care and support to this person. My humility will have me understand that I am going to make it worse. It's not a maybe, it's a certainty. I will impede the process of this person. And for someone like me who cherishes autonomy, who cherishes self-efficacy and self-direction, because I was never given that, the worst possible thing I can do is assume that my idea of someone's process is the best way for them to go about it.
Well said. Yeah, thank you. Mike.
I go back to the importance of ego, right? That when working with a recovery, having a ego shows confidence and shows what they, provides leadership onto where they can go. When I become egotistical, I talk more than them because I want to show what I know. And at that point, I'm not being a good recovery coach. I'm the focus and they aren't.
Thank you. Bunny.
Yes, Mike, that was excellent. That exactly what I was thinking, because it has everything to do with it. With the three-legged stool, if we look at it, we have to treat people as resources, and if our ego is inflated, then we're probably exactly going to do what you say. I've got all the answers. Let me give it to you. Listening actively is a sign of that, right? Just like you mentioned, I'm going to be talking more instead of listening to them. Discovering and managing your own stuff. That's what it's about. And ego is managing my own ego, managing my own stuff, realizing it, staying in my lane, all of that, it has so much to do with everything we do, even asking good questions, instead of, again, back to what Mike just said, instead of giving them the answer is asking for, what they think, and being interested in listening to hear that, so yeah, all of that, the whole ball of wax, man. And I liked what Phil said about being at the right, I was thinking of it as balance, but you can say it the same way, the right pressure, inflated or deflated or in the middle. And you stole, I was going to come back and say egomaniac with with inferiority complex. I remember that is so key. That was so key to me in my early recovery, understanding myself. Yes.
Yeah, me too. Peacemaker.
This is a great conversation. I believe you need ego to be a coach, right? Because I always look at like coaches that are timid. I don't want to. I give them a nickname: back burners. I look at it like a stove, but you never use those back burners. You always use those front burners, and they get clogged up and stuff. So I think ego is a superpower, right? And and it's like I think of Spider-Man, right? With great power comes great responsibility. And I think, and I've seen so many times growing up that ego can get you in trouble once you start ego tripping, right? You get this power, you have these special abilities, and then you take advantage of them instead of using them for good, right? But I think you do need some sort of ego. You need to wear it. And I like what Hill was saying, ego is not your amigo. And it's like, but you got to remember what they said. You keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. So you got to keep your ego right there, holding his hand right there to know where he's at. Because I think you have to have that shit. I think ego is kind of like part of your spirit, right? And if we don't have it, then we don't really glow. We don't have this aura that people are attracted to. So it's good to have an ego.
Thanks, Michael. Will.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, I really like what's being said on here today. It's really thought-provoking for me, the conversations we're having. And, I think, so I want to go back to the overinflated ego, or the sort of normal ego bit is where I'm at. And, I've done some training around the ego, the super ego, and the id, or whatever it was. But I can remember when I first come into recovery, and, I got a little trainee recovery worker job, and I wasn't aware of what ego was back then. And I used to get up every morning, I'd put my Superman cape on, and I'd run down to the drug and alcohol service, and I'd want to help people. And I wasn't doing it at the time. I was genuinely doing it trying to help people, and I genuinely thought I was doing the right thing. But in that moment, I was getting so ahead of myself. Like, I'd been clean half hour, and I thought I knew it all. So that was ego for me, inflated ego for me, but without realizing it. Today, I'm kind of quite aware of what my qualities and skills are. And, some of that can be around ego, and I can talk a good game, but also I'm humble enough to know that actually that bit over there isn't mine, and I'm going to pass it across to someone else. So I think for me, it's that ego and then the super inflated ego bit. That's the bit what I've got to watch.
Yeah. And I think as I carry this analogy out, as I'm thinking about it, if it is a tire, right? A tire, like a car tire, it's you put air in, and if it doesn't pop a leak, it stays at 35 pounds of pressure, right? Because it's sealed and you've done a lot of work on that container. So the only way it deflates is if you hit something hard and and it pops and you lose all the air, or you actually have to take an air hose to it and really pump yourself up and pump your own self ego out of control, right? Maybe somebody else can pump your own air, but I don't know. I'm playing with that analogy. I'm going to write more about it, but think about more about it, but it's interesting. So, but we always think about ego inflation, right? A lot in this field, especially, but ego deflation, where we start to think less of ourselves, also plays a role too. And we'll talk a little bit more about it. I have one more question. We got a couple more to go through. Nate and then Khalees.
Well, y'all have to give me, excuse me, my fingers are slow. They all jacked up. So anyway, for me, the ego, the role of it, the ego is like one of the goals of a recovery coach is to remove barriers. So with a healthy ego, not an overinflated ego, you can help their recovery see the barrier. Because actually, you know, when you treat their recovery as a resource, they're the one that's going to have to actually remove the barrier. So if you got a healthy ego, you can help that recovery see the barrier that's preventing them from achieving their goal. So that's what I think. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Khalees.
I'm going to push myself and talk positively about the ego because I'm still not completely comfortable with it. But I think in my role as a recovery coach, professional trainer and facilitator and coach stuff is my healthy ego shows whenever I can say, I don't know. I don't have all the answers. And I think that's just me being honest and being comfortable and not having all the answers and saying, let me ask for help and let me see what I can do, or just teach me, show me. And I think that's whenever I am positively using the ego in my role.
So when I asked the question, I said, what does ego have to do with recovery coaching? Everybody went to the coach, yourselves as coach. What about the recovery in ego issues? And how would you deal with that, not deal with it? Any experiences with working with recoveries where you've assessed an ego situation? Mike.
That's like one of the first, I'm not the only, but one of the first assessments, because like we've talked about here, if someone's all strung out, but their ego is a mile high, I'm not going to be able to help them much as a recovery coach. They've got a little humility. We can work together and, you know, I can listen to them and find out what they need, and it's real. It's not some delusional ego trip. So it just is a better connection when that ego is in balance. And I like the tire pressure thing, by the way. I just put a sticky note up on the wall in front of my desk because I think that's a great analogy.
Oh, thank you. Kelly.
I know you explained what PSI is in the chat. It
Yep.
still means absolutely nothing to me, so I'm just going to move on.
Because you don't want to learn about it either. So you made that clear too.
My ego tells me that I will just have my father do it. Thank you.
Well, and being like your dad, I get that. So that's why I want you to learn on your own.
So before I worked here, I worked in detox. And I have two stories about kind of, I guess, the duality of ego. The first one was we had this woman come in, and girl, it was a very interesting intake because, so mind you, this is someone coming in from just like, you know, living on the streets, just very beaten down by the life as one becomes. But she was brought in by her mother, and mom had apparently broken the bank going shopping for stuff for detox, and it was like hair curler, hair straightener, makeup, face masks, press on nails, like all of this stuff. And I'm going through the intake with her, and I'm just like, sweetheart, you can't bring this stuff in here. And she's like, well, I need this. And it was that, like, the concept of I am so completely lost in ego that I can't differentiate between a need and a want. And so we were kind of trying to process and do this, like, okay, if you can keep the nails, then we're not bringing in the 2 straighteners. And it was kind of this back and forth. And eventually, luckily, as a peer in New York State, I'm kind of free of the entrapments of clinical language and that clinician. So I can be very frank with people. And I was like, listen, babe, I don't know what you think you're going to get wearing nails and having a full face of makeup every day in detox, but I promise you there's nobody in here that you want to leave with. So like, let's figure out what we're doing here. And like, what is in you that feels like this is going to help, and how can we address that in another way? And I was able to kind of barge through that initial, like, I need. And it turned out that this woman had kind of been pressured into sex work by this guy on the street, and she didn't feel beautiful. And so once we kind of like broke through that idea of I don't feel beautiful, we were able to have a really meaningful conversation about like reclaiming our womanhood in early recovery. And it ended up being a really, really awesome experience. I still talk to her today. She's actually going for her SERPA exam soon. This was like 4 years ago, and she's going for her SERPA exam soon. So
Great.
The other part is, I know when we talk about ego, a lot of us have kind of gone that like, I'm the best, no one will ever be better. But a lot of the times what I see when I work in this like pre-treatment and detox settings is where a lot of my work has been, is that I am the absolute bottom of the barrel, worst possible person ever, and I don't deserve any shred of dignity or help. And that is what I would get a lot. And so kind of like working through that, this idea where like my self-esteem is just so gutted that I'm just going to sit like a lump and not shower. I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to do all of these things. And just sort of saying like, hey, listen, man, we've all done bad shit. You know, I was a terrible person when I was using. I wasn't a good person doing bad things. I was a bad person, just straight up. I was a terrible person. And kind of working people through where it's not, we're probably not going to get people into like this, like, yeah, self-confidence, woohoo point. But the idea that like, I deserve to eat a meal and brush my teeth today, that was kind of like the goal. So both ends of the spectrum, I got to see very often working in detox. That's why I loved it so much. I was certainly that more the basement of ego. Like no one deserves less than me. That's kind of where I took it. And then of course I shot right up in early recovery, and it was like, I need gluten-free, and I need this, and I need that, and I need the most expensive shampoo. And it's just like, okay, you were shooting up with puddle water, but now you need like $50. That's weird. But you know, so I don't know. I'm done.
Thank you, Thank you, Kelly. Let's couple few more, and Hilu.
Yeah, just real quick, in terms of ego, like at the detention center we work at, for me, what I encounter a lot in supporting them is that when we put a release plan, recovery plan, and they, you know, sign on and they've been supported, and the minute are out the door, takes over and they come back a few weeks later and such, and I automatically get a report on anybody myself or my team have worked with that comes back. And it always comes back to the ego conversation of it, that the ego lets me think that I can do this, I have to do this by myself, I can do this time, even though it didn't work last time. So my experience is having conversations with participants is that the ego, again, not even ego, but to talk about how in that setting, the ego is a survival mode also. In the setting of, you know, it is one of that, if you show humility, you are going to be either punked out or whatever that terminology that may be. So we address those and that possibility, but through humility, I guarantee, you know, or I share my story, you know, with them willing that you get strength that you don't even realize that will come out. So, and literally leaning in and asking them, support them. You don't have to do this alone anymore. You know, being able to have the compassion and say, while you're here, let's practice that. And then going in every week, having a conversation to move the ego a little bit, you know, so I see it's a barrier for people attempting recovery.
Well said. Thank you, Hilu. Mike.
Well,
Mike Hills, yes.
When I've been in this situation, I use it to, you know, treat them as a resource and roll with resistance. Sounds like you know what you're looking for in recovery. How can I help you? I mean, you're here for a reason. You don't have all the answers. So what can we work on together?
Right. Like that. Yeah, sure. Bunny.
Yes, absolutely. And I was thinking of several different things, you know, and you all touched on it, especially Hilu, because I was already thinking about the inflated ego and the tough guys that we deal with in the jail, you know, but it really is a defense mechanism, a facade that's set up. So if we just let them talk and build a bridge with empathy, a lot of times, you know, and I don't know if Helo's experienced it, but over time, you know, the guy might break down and start hugging you and crying, you know. So, you know, what we think, you know, we just can't throw him away and say, I'm not dealing with that, you know, he's got an overinflated ego, is our opportunity, you know, to help this person, you know, with, just like he said, with some questions and some love and empathy that we can treat him as a resource, manage our own stuff, the whole thing. Now, I know about this very well, Phil, because my wife is a recovery coach and, you know, 35. Some of you all know her, Latanya Rich. She is also, she's the real MVP, right? She is the executive director of Trio Hopus, the real MVP. So she knows how to build discrepancy with me a lot of times, right? When I'm off balance, right? And she'll build discrepancy, and she is very good at it, you know, without being, you know, offensive, you know, maybe offensive once in a while. But, you know, you know, it's a chance to build discrepancy with questions and talking with people who have, you know, who have overinflated views or, you know, just out of balance or whatever, or maybe you don't think it's whatever it is. I'm just saying, getting them to help them to come back to balance, you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Benny. Mike.
As Bunny was speaking, I was thanking God my wife's not a recovery coach, but that'd be a whole other thing for me. But honestly, man, Hilo hit it for me, because I was thinking it. I was like, being able to put myself back there. Ego was my only survival. It was my main survival instinct, right? And he took the words out of my mouth, because it was the only way that I felt important. I had nothing else going on in my life at that time. So it was very much a survival instinct. The recoveries that can come in with huge egos, they're my favorite clients. I want the guy with the brand new Nikes at the halfway house. That's my guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, you know, most of the time, you know, it's just because we're lacking something else, right? And, you know, they can be the ones that need the most assistance in learning about, you know, confidence and, you know, self-esteem. And I don't know, I take it on. Maybe I like too much of a challenge, but those are my guys.
I like that. So as we have a couple minutes left, I just would ask you to think of this. How does one, and this is for you and for your recoveries, how does one develop a healthy ego? And I see you guys all have so many ideas. Everybody raised their hand at once. And Neetha.
I think it's about surrounding ourselves with the right people who build us up, but also, you know, challenge us and put us in check, or ask us really good coaching questions. You know, I think often keeping that ego in check is sometimes just the little things, like spending time with my grandson, and it puts the world in a different perspective. You know, when he says things like, you know, he feels safe and he's grateful for living with his family, it just kind of keeps the perspective. And then just sound checking things, you know, a lot. Khalees is really good for that for me sometimes. You know, I just say, what do you think? And she's like, oh, Mom, that ain't happening. You know, so yeah, I think good people around me help keep that all in good perspective.
Yeah. And there's some great suggestions in the chat as well. Nate.
For me, it's my 3 indispensable spiritual principles: honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. You know, I got a sponsor that I work with. I do self-care, you know, I do yoga, I do massage, I do all those things that affects my whole. You know, my ego is part of that whole physical, mental, spiritual component of who I am. And so like it's been said in this, it's been a great conversation, by the way. Thanks for facilitating this, Phil. The ego is not a bad thing. It's just part of who we are. As long as we keep it in balance and not be egotistical. So I got people in my life to help me stay grounded. So thank you.
I think for me too, it's like I've said many times that recovery is a journey towards self-awareness, and self-awareness is also awareness of your own ego as well. So, Kelly, you raise your hand. We're at 11:30, so you can have the last note. You're good. Bunny, you good? You have your hand still raised?
Yeah, I just want to throw in there, to me, the most important thing that I do is hit my knees. Okay.
Yes.
That's not, and in that position, I'm in a humble position, and I connect with my higher power. The spirituality is the most important part. If I'm there spiritually, then the ego, all the things I attach to my ego tend to disintegrate,
Right. Kelly, you can say one last word. It's cool.
It's very difficult for me to.
Well, I want to try to coach you a little bit. See if you can keep it to a 15-second soundbite.
Okay. I am a big believer in like restorative practices and community care. I really believe that like we keep us safe. So for me, being deeply involved in not just the recovery community, but the community in which I exist, because a huge part of my recovery honestly has nothing to do with recovery or addiction. It's really just about like relearning humanity and like finding hobbies, connecting with people, sharing food. I live in a very diverse area. And so like community care and keeping things within the community thriving is really, really a big part of my life and my recovery.
Well said. Well done. Thank you. All right. So this is this month's topic has been about ego. Thank you all for your contributions. What an amazing group of people, and learned so much from all your insights. I appreciate each and every one of you. So go out and multiply, make more recovery coaches, not kids.
You're funny.